Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are from Group 6 and the member are it's me Dita Ningrum and my friend Elisa and Fatima Zahra. We will discussion about class 2 and for the first material will be explained by Elisa. Elisa, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Ma'am Nur Shafa, the lecturer of English Syntax subject, and all my loving classmates and my loving audience. Okay, we are from the SILF group, and in this video, we would like to explain to you about the next chapter, that is classes 2. Okay, I'm Elisa, and I would like to explain you about the first point. The first point is the relationship between main and subordinate clause. Subordinate clause is derived from main clauses which are put into subordinate positions in sentences and undergo certain syntactic changes. And here we have an example from the phrase. Elle peut. It's a main clause. It means she can. Evan elle passe. It is subordinate clause and it means so that she can. Next. When a complementizer is removed from an adverbial clause or a complement clause in English, it leaves a sequence of words which make up a complete main clause. The removal of the complementizer from relative clauses, however, leaves a sequence that lacks either the noun phrase which would be to the left of the verb or the noun phrase which would be to the right of the verb. For the example, the cottage which Mrs. Dashwood accepted was very small. To be, Mrs. Dashwood accepted the cottage. Next, clause and sentence. The clause is an important unit of analysis because many head modifier relations are found within the clause and because the criteria for constituent structure, such as transposition, apply best inside the clause. The sentence is not very useful in this respect. Only a few dependency relations cross clause boundaries. And the constituent structure criteria do not really apply outside single clauses. Next, we have an example here. Anna Musgrave has just seen Mr. Elliot in Part Street. This example contains a single main clause, which can stand on its own and constitute a sentence. Within that clause, there is a relatively dense network of dependencies.
Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fatima Zahra and in here I am the next presenter and in here I will explain about more properties of subordinate clause. The subordinate clause in a given sentence are to a large extent grammatically independent of the main clause. They can stand on their own in writing at any rate, but the main clause doesn't control the choice of verb and other constituents, nor the choice of participant rules, tense, aspect, and modal verbs. Compare the variants of the complement clause below. We heard that Captain Benwick would marry Louisa Hayter, that Mary Hayter was a hypochondriac, or that Admiral Croft was always accompanied by his wife. Two of the complement clauses are active and the last one is passive. One complement clause is a copula construction, that Mary Hayter was a hypochondriac, while the other two are not. We hear that Captain Benwick has married Louisa Hayter, that Captain Benwick married Louisa Hayter, that Captain Benwick is marrying, that Captain Benwick will marry Louisa Hayter. One complement has a perfect verb is has married. The second has a simple past tense is married. The third has present tense verb is marrying, and the fourth has a future tense verb is will marry. We heard that Captain Benwick might marry, must have married Louisa Heather. The complement clause have different modal verbs. Might, marry versus must have married. Subordinate clauses are subject to a number of constraints that don't apply to main clauses. Main clause can be declarative, interrogative, or imperative. For example, Captain Wentworth wrote a letter to Anne Elliot is declarative. B. Did Captain Wentworth write a letter to Anne Elliot is interrogative. C. Write a letter to Anne Elliot is imperative. Subordinate clauses are not free with respect to choice of declarative, interrogative, and imperative syntax. For the example, relative clauses, adverbial clauses, and the most type of complement clause must have declarative syntax. For example, because did Marin love Willoughby, she refused to believe that he had deserted her, because Marin loved Willoughby. If did Emma leave Hartfield, Mr. Woodhouse would be unhappy if Emma left Hartfield. When did Fanny return? She found Tom Bertram very ill. When Fanny returned, the cottage which did Mrs. Dashwood accept was rather small, which Mrs. Dashwood accepted. Catherine feared that was the Abbey haunted. Catherine feared that the Abbey was haunted. Okay, the first most types of complement clause was used because a number of words allow a type of complement that is traditionally called indirect questions. For example, Elizabeth asks whether or if Mr. Bingley would return to Netherfield is completely declarative in syntax, apart from the WH word whether. B. The girls wondered who Mr. Bennet had received in his library is partly declarative and partly interrogative. Declarative in order of non-phrase and auxiliary verb, but interrogative in having the WH word who at the front of the clause. Contemporary spoken English has the type of complement clause. It is normal for spoken English in all sorts of formal and informal contexts and is beginning to turn up in written text. For example, she asked, was Alison coming to the party? And we were wondering who did you meet at the conference. The complement clauses have straightforward interrogative syntax. Note that although the complement clause in example have interrogative syntax, they don't invalidate the statement that subordinate clauses are typically limited to declarative syntax. Subordinate clauses are limited in other respects. Main clauses, but not subordinate clauses, are open to a wide range of syntactic construction. Okay? Now, prepositional phrase fronting. A. In came unnoticed. Unnoticed came in or into the room came unnoticed. B. She said that in came unnoticed. She said that into the room came unnoticed. C. The person who in came at that moment was unnoticed. The person who into the room came at the moment was unnoticed. D. Because in came unnoticed, Fanny stopped talking. Because into the room came unnoticed, Fanny stopped talking. When in came unnoticed, Fanny stopped talking. When into the room came unnoticed, Fanny stopped talking. The construction has a preposition in first position followed by the main verb followed by the subject non-phrase. For example, B. It can occur in declarative main clauses and in complement clauses, but not in relative clauses or adverbial clauses. Okay. Negative fronting. Negative fronting, for the example, never had Sir Thomas been so offended. Sir Thomas had never been so offended. They realized that never had Sir Thomas been so offended. See, the person who never had he been so offended was Sir Thomas. D. Because never had Sir Thomas been so offended, even Mr. Yates left. E. When never had Sir Thomas been so offended, Mr. Yates left. Example point B can be derived from Sir Thomas had never been so offended. Never moves to the front of the clause and Sir Thomas and had changed place. As with preposition fronting, the construction is acceptable in main clauses and complement clauses but not in relative or adverbial clause. Okay, for the last, take question. For the example, Dr. Grantley habitually ate too much rich food, didn't he? We realized that Dr. Grantley died because he ate too much rich food, didn't he? The person who ate too much rich food, didn't he, was Dr. Grantley and other. In A is a tag question shown named because the structure consists of a declarative clause. Dr. Grantley habitually ate too much rich food. With a question tagged on at the end, didn't he? Tag questions consist of verbs such as did, might, can, and so on, plus a pronoun, and possibly with the negation mark not or not. Okay, I think enough for me. Thank you for your nice attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you.
And the next material is finite and non-finite clauses. Finite clauses must contain a verb which shows tense. Meanwhile, non-finite clause contain a verb which does not show tense. Much contemporary analysis recognize a category of non-finite clause sequences of verbs which lack a finite verb but nonetheless are treated as subordinate clauses. Examples are given with the non-finite clause in italic. And the first example is Fanny regret talking to Mary. Henry wants to marry Fanny. Mr. Penn having taken the order upstairs. Mr. Brantley proposed to Jane. All Mr. Collins does is press Lady de Bourgh, and then Lady de Bourgh tried to persuade Elizabeth to renounce Mr. Archie. Against the above data must be set the fact that the non-finite construction are highly limited in their grammar. Example, A until E exclude tense and modal verbs such as they exclude interrogative and imperative contraction and do not allow propositional phrase fronting or negative. In connection with Henry wants to marry Fanny, the noun phrase Henry determines the interpretation of another invisible noun phrase, the subject of Mary. In a similar analysis is applied to the gerund, the ink press that the complements love, where the understood subject of talking is Fanny. This is the type of finite and non-finite clause. For finite verb is transitive or intransitive, action and stative verb, linking verb, and the last is auxiliary verb. And for the non-finite verb is infinitive, gerund, and participle. Thank you. I think enough for our presentation. I hope you like, guys. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ojo konduk tak rekam. Ojo konduk tak rekam, sumpah. Ojo konduk tak rekam. What the fuck? Kok iso? kata astagfirullahaladzim.